The substitute teacher passed me a student's essay and said, "This kid is describing their own kidnapping and thinks it's fiction." Ms. Brennan handed me the paper during my lunch break in the teacher's lounge, her hands shaking enough that I noticed the tremor before I even looked at what she was holding. I was a guidance counselor at Riverside Middle School, had been for 8 years, and had seen my share of concerning student work. Essays about divorce, depression, abuse written in careful metaphors that kids thought protected them. But Ms. Brennan's expression was different. She'd been substituting for David Kowalski's 7th grade English class for 3 days while he recovered from surgery, and she looked genuinely frightened. "I assigned a creative writing exercise yesterday," she said quietly, glancing around the empty lounge. "Fiction stories, any topic they wanted. Most kids wrote about zombies or dragons or their dogs. Then I read this one from a student named Lily Chen. Every detail is too specific, too consistent. She's writing about being taken from her home, about living somewhere else, about people who call themselves her family but aren't, and she doesn't realize she's describing her own life." I took the essay, 5 pages in careful handwriting with almost no corrections, the kind of writing that flowed easily because it was true. The title was "The Girl Who Lived 2 Lives," and it started with a girl named Maya being taken from a house by a woman with red hair who told her they were going on an adventure. Maya was 7 in the story. The woman drove her to a different house in a different town where a man waited, and they told Maya this was her new home now, that her old parents had been pretending, that these were her real parents who loved her very much. Maya cried for days but eventually accepted it because children accept what adults tell them when they have no other choice. The essay described 5 years in this new house with these new parents who homeschooled Maya, so she never went to regular school until this year, when they'd finally enrolled her in 7th grade because the truancy officers had started asking questions. Maya wrote about remembering her old house, her old room, her old dog named Biscuit, but the new parents said those were just dreams, that Maya had always lived with them, that she was confused. The details were devastatingly specific. The old house had blue shutters and a maple tree in the yard. The new house had a basement where Maya had to sleep when she misbehaved. The new parents called her Lily, not Maya. I read the entire essay twice while Ms. Brennan sat across from me drinking cold coffee and watching my face for reaction. When I finished, I looked up and asked the obvious question. "Have you talked to Lily about this?" Ms. Brennan shook her head. "I wanted to bring it to you first. I'm just a substitute. I don't know these kids, don't know their backgrounds. Maybe this is normal for her, maybe she writes dark fiction all the time. But my instinct is screaming that something is very wrong." I looked at the student information system on my phone, pulling up Lily Chen's file. 12 years old, enrolled at Riverside 6 weeks ago at the start of the school year, previous education listed as homeschool, parents listed as Robert and Susan Chen, address in the northern suburbs. No red flags in her record, no concerning notes from teachers, nothing that would indicate a problem. But the essay described a kidnapping, described it from the inside with the kind of detail you don't invent. "I need to talk to her," I said. "Today, during 8th period. Can you send her to my office?" Ms. Brennan nodded, relieved to have transferred the burden of this knowledge to someone else. Lily Chen arrived at my office at 1:45, a small girl with dark hair and a ponytail, and oversized glasses that kept sliding down her nose. She looked nervous, the way kids always look when called to the guidance counselor's office, expecting to be in trouble for something they don't remember doing. "Hi, Lily," I said, gesturing for her to sit in the chair across from my desk. "I'm Ms. Rivera. I wanted to talk to you about the essay you wrote for Ms. Brennan's class." Her nervousness increased visibly. "Did I do something wrong? Was it not supposed to be that long?" She said any length was fine. I smiled, trying to project calm I didn't feel. "The essay was great. Really creative, very detailed. I'm just curious about your story. The girl Maya? Where did you get the idea for her character?" Lily relaxed slightly. "I don't know. I just made it up. We were supposed to write fiction, so I thought about what would be interesting. A girl who gets taken but then thinks her new life is real. It's about memory and identity and stuff." Her answer was too practiced, too carefully constructed for a 12-year-old explaining a random creative choice. I pulled out the essay and read a passage aloud. Maya remembered her 7th birthday party with the chocolate cake and the bouncy house. But when she asked her new parents about it, they showed her photos of a different birthday party with a vanilla cake and no bouncy house. And Maya started to believe her memories were wrong. I looked at Lily. "That's very specific. Did you base this on anything real?" Lily's face closed down immediately, the openness replaced with careful blankness. "No, I just made it up. Can I go back to class now?" I knew if I pushed too hard she'd shut down completely, would never talk to me again, but I also knew I couldn't let this go. "Lily, if something is happening at home, if you're in any kind of situation where you don't feel safe, you can tell me. That's my job, to help students who are dealing with difficult things." She stood up abruptly. "Nothing is happening. My parents are fine. Everything is fine. I just wrote a story because that's what Ms. Brennan assigned. Can I please go now?" I couldn't legally keep her. She wasn't in immediate danger that I could see, wasn't reporting abuse, wasn't asking for help. I let her go and watched her hurry out of my office, then immediately pulled up her file again and started digging deeper. The enrollment paperwork showed Robert and Susan Chen had registered Lily in August, providing all the required documents, including birth certificate, immunization records, and proof of address. Everything looked legitimate on the surface, but something bothered me about the timing. Why enroll a previously homeschooled child in 7th grade specifically? Why not 6th grade or 8th grade? Why this year? I called the district's enrollment office and asked about Lily's registration. The clerk pulled up the file and confirmed that the Chens had enrolled her without any issues, all documents verified. Did they provide transcripts from her homeschool years? I asked. Just a parent-signed affidavit stating she'd completed the required curriculum, the clerk said. That's standard for homeschool students. We don't require formal transcripts. I thanked her and hung up, my unease growing. Anyone could homeschool a child in our state. You just filed paperwork with the district and kept minimal records. No one checked whether the child was actually learning anything or even whether the child belonged to the parents claiming to homeschool them. The system assumed parents were telling the truth, that children living in homes with adults who claimed to be their parents actually were their children. I spent my planning period researching missing children, specifically girls who would be around 12 now, who'd disappeared 5 years ago when they were 7. The National Center for Missing and Exploited Children had a searchable database, and I filtered by age, gender, and disappearance date. Dozens of results came up, too many to sort through, so I added physical descriptors based on Lily. Asian features, dark hair, small for her age. The list narrowed to 18 possible matches. I started going through them one by one, looking at the photos of missing 7-year-olds and trying to see if any of them could be the 12-year-old sitting in my school. The 10th photo stopped me cold. Maya Russo, reported missing from her home in Greenfield, a town 2 hours north of here, on March 15th 5 years ago. She'd been 7 years old, had dark hair, and a gap between her front teeth visible in her school photo. The physical description matched Lily. But more than that, the details in the missing person report matched details from the essay. Maya had a dog named Biscuit. Her house had a large maple tree in the front yard. She'd been taken from her bedroom in the early morning hours, window open, no signs of forced entry. I stared at Maya Russo's photo for 10 minutes, comparing it mentally to Lily Chen. 5 years of growth made definitive identification impossible from a photo, but the bone structure looked right. The shape of her face, the way her ears sat slightly prominent, and that gap in her teeth. I tried to remember if I'd noticed a gap when Lily spoke in my office. I couldn't recall. I needed to see her again. Needed to be sure before I did anything that could destroy an innocent family or fail to save a kidnapped child. I printed out Maya Russo's missing person report and put it in a folder, then sent an email to Lily's afternoon teachers asking them to send her back to my office before the end of the day. Follow-up conversation needed regarding academic planning. The lie felt justified given the circumstances. Lily arrived at 2:50, 15 minutes before final bell, looking more guarded than she had earlier. Ms. Rivera, I really don't want to talk about my essay anymore. It was just a story. I don't know why everyone is making such a big deal about it. I gestured for her to sit, and I spoke carefully, choosing every word for maximum impact while trying not to traumatize her further if I was right. Lily, I want you to look at something and tell me if you recognize the person in this photo. I turned my computer monitor so she could see Maya Russo's missing child photo. Does this girl look familiar to you? Lily looked at the screen, her expression neutral, then shook her head. No, I don't know who that is. But her hands were trembling in her lap, fingers twisting together in a gesture of stress that contradicted her calm voice. Her name was Maya Russo, I said gently. She was taken from her home 5 years ago when she was 7 years old. She had a dog named Biscuit. She lived in a house with a big maple tree in front. She had a gap between her front teeth. I paused. Lily, can you smile for me? She pressed her lips together, refusing, and I saw tears forming behind her glasses. I need to go home, she whispered. My parents will be worried if I'm late. Her parents, Robert and Susan Chen, who'd enrolled her 6 weeks ago, who claimed she'd been homeschooled her entire life, who maybe weren't her parents at all. Lily, I need you to listen to me very carefully, I said, my voice steady despite my racing heart. If the people you're living with aren't your real parents, if they took you from somewhere else, you're not in trouble. You didn't do anything wrong. But I need to know the truth so I can help you. She stood up abruptly, knocking her chair backward. They are my real parents. I've always lived with them. I don't know who Maya Russo is, and I don't know why you're showing me pictures of missing children. This is crazy. I want to leave. I couldn't physically stop her, but I also couldn't let her walk out without doing something. Lily, please, just smile for me. Just once. Let me see your teeth. She turned toward the door, reaching for the handle, and I said the one thing I thought might break through. Maya, your real parents have been looking for you for 5 years. They never stopped. They still have your room exactly the way you left it. Biscuit is 14 years old now and still sleeps on your bed every night. They want you back. Lily froze with her hand on the doorknob. She didn't turn around, but her shoulders started shaking with silent sobs. When she finally spoke, her voice was so quiet I barely heard it. They told me my real parents didn't want me anymore. They said I was given away because I was too much trouble. I moved slowly toward her, not wanting to spook her, and put my hand gently on her shoulder. That was a lie, Maya. Your real parents, Frank and Diana Russo, have been searching for you every single day. They never gave you away. You were stolen from them." She turned around and looked up at me, tears streaming down her face, and when she spoke, her lips pulled back enough that I saw it. The gap between her front teeth, slightly wider now than in the 7-year-old photo, but unmistakable. "I don't remember them," she whispered. "I remember pieces. The tree, the dog, the blue shutters. But when I try to remember their faces, there's nothing. Robert and Susan showed me photos, told me stories, and after a while, those became my memories. I don't know what's real anymore." I pulled her into a hug and felt her collapse against me. 5 years of buried truth finally breaking through. "We're going to figure this out," I told her. "We're going to call the police right now, and we're going to get you back to your real family. But I need you to stay here with me, in this office, until they arrive. Can you do that?" She nodded against my shoulder, still crying, and I guided her back to the chair. I called 911 first, explained the situation as clearly as I could. Possible recovery of a child abducted 5 years ago. Currently safe in my office. Suspected kidnappers unaware that we knew. The dispatcher took all my information and said officers were en route. ETA 10 minutes. Then I called my principal, Dr. Vance, and gave him the abbreviated version. He arrived at my office 3 minutes later, took one look at Maya's tear-stained face, and immediately understood this wasn't a drill or a misunderstanding. "What do you need from me?" he asked. "Keep anyone from coming to my office," I said, "especially if Robert or Susan Chen show up. They're supposed to pick Maya up at 3:15, and when she doesn't come out to the pickup line, they're going to come looking for her." Dr. Vance nodded and positioned himself in the hallway outside my door. Maya sat curled in the chair, arms wrapped around herself, staring at nothing. "What happens now?" she asked quietly. "Are the police going to arrest Robert and Susan?" I sat down across from her. "Yes, probably. They kidnapped you, Maya. That's a serious crime. But the most important thing is getting you back to your real parents." She looked at me with frightened eyes. "But what if I don't remember them? What if they're strangers to me? Robert and Susan, they're the ones who've been taking care of me. They make me breakfast. They help me with homework. They're mean sometimes, but they're not, terrible. This is going to destroy them." The Stockholm Syndrome was evident in her words. The way she'd bonded with her captors over 5 years. The way she felt guilty for the consequences they'd face for their own crimes. "Maya, they stole you from your family," I said firmly. "They made your real parents think you were dead or lost forever. They made you forget who you really were. That's not love, that's control. And whatever happens to them, they brought on themselves." Police sirens approached the school, multiple units from the sound of it. Within minutes, 2 officers were in my office, a detective close behind. I explained everything while Maya sat silently, occasionally nodding to confirm details. The detective, a woman in her 40s named Detective Carla Simmons, knelt in front of Maya's chair and spoke gently. "Maya, I know this is overwhelming, but I need to take some photos and possibly your fingerprints so we can verify your identity. Is that okay with you?" Maya nodded, and Detective Simmons took several photos from different angles, then used a portable fingerprint scanner she'd brought. The results came back in minutes. A match to prints taken from Maya's bedroom 5 years ago during the initial investigation. "It's her," Detective Simmons confirmed, her voice tight with suppressed emotion. "Maya Russo, missing 5 years, recovered alive. We need to arrest Robert and Susan Chen immediately." She radioed to units outside. "Suspects are supposed to pick up victim at school pickup at 3:15. We're at 3:10 now. Position units at all exits, but don't approach until they're away from children. We don't want a scene in front of the school." Through my office window, I could see parents starting to line up in cars for pickup. The final bell rang, and students poured out of classrooms, heading for buses and parent pickup. I watched the line of cars, looking for anyone who might be the Chens. "What kind of car do they drive?" I asked Maya. She gave me the make and model, and I relayed it to Detective Simmons, who passed it to the units outside. "They're here," she said into her radio. "Gray sedan, license plate matching registration for Susan Chen. 2 occupants. Wait until pickup is complete and they're leaving the school property, then execute the stop." Maya started crying again. "They're going to know I told. They're going to know I betrayed them." I wanted to correct her language, to remind her that telling the truth about being kidnapped wasn't betrayal, but Detective Simmons beat me to it. "Maya, you didn't betray anyone. You were 7 years old when they took you. None of this is your fault. Not what they did to you. Not what happens to them now. You were a victim, and you still are a victim. The only people responsible for this situation are Robert and Susan Chen." We watched through the window as the gray sedan pulled up to the pickup area. The school secretary came over the PA system calling for Lily Chen to report to parent pickup. No one came, obviously, since Maya was sitting in my office surrounded by police. After a minute, Susan Chen got out of the car and walked toward the building, looking annoyed. Dr. Vance intercepted her at the door, said something I couldn't hear, and she went back to her car. They waited another 5 minutes, Susan repeatedly checking her phone, before Robert got out and both of them came toward the building together. Detective Simmons made a decision. "We can't let them into the school. Too much risk of a hostage situation or violence around children. I'm calling the arrest now." She radioed the outside units. "Move in. Arrest both suspects. Be advised they may realize victim is missing and could become hostile." Through the window, I watched 4 police cars converge on the gray sedan. Robert and Susan Chen were walking up the sidewalk toward the school entrance when officers approached them from multiple directions. Susan saw the police first and grabbed Robert's arm, and for a moment I thought they might run. But there were too many officers, too many witnesses, nowhere to go. They were handcuffed within seconds, both of them shouting, demanding to know what was happening, insisting there was some mistake. An officer started reading them their rights. Another officer searched the car. Parents in the pickup line watched with confused horror, pulling out phones to record the scene. Within minutes, it would be all over social media. Maya couldn't see the arrest from where she sat, blocked by the angle of the window, and I was glad. She didn't need to watch the people she'd thought of as parents for 5 years being taken into custody. Detective Simmons received confirmation through her radio that both suspects were in custody and being transported to the station. She turned to Maya with a gentle smile. "Maya, I need to take you to the hospital for a medical evaluation, just to make sure you're healthy and haven't been harmed. Then I'm going to take you to see your real parents. They've been notified that you've been found and they're driving here now from Greenfield. They should arrive in about 90 minutes. Maya's face went pale. "I don't know if I'm ready. What if they hate me? What if I don't recognize them? What if this is all a huge mistake?" I took her hand. "It's not a mistake, Maya. The fingerprints confirmed your identity, and your parents won't hate you. They've been waiting 5 years for this moment. They're going to be so happy to see you." Detective Simmons added, "We'll have counselors there to help with the reunion. This is going to be strange and overwhelming for everyone, but you're going to get through it, and you're going to have all the support you need." Maya stood on shaky legs, and I walked with her and Detective Simmons out of the school, past the chaos of confused parents and students, to an unmarked police car waiting by the curb. The hospital evaluation took 2 hours. Doctors examined Maya for signs of physical abuse and found some old scars that concerned them, marks consistent with being struck or restrained, but nothing recent or severe. Psychologists conducted preliminary interviews to assess her mental state and determine what kind of ongoing therapy she'd need. Everyone was gentle, patient, understanding that this child had experienced years of psychological manipulation and would need extensive support to recover. I stayed with her through all of it, the only familiar face in a sea of strangers asking questions and documenting evidence. Around 6 in the evening, Detective Simmons came into the examination room where Maya and I were waiting. "They're here," she said quietly. "Your parents. They're in a conference room down the hall. Whenever you're ready, we'll take you to see them." Maya looked terrified. "What if I don't remember them? What if they're disappointed in who I've become?" Detective Simmons knelt in front of her. "Maya, you were 7 years old when you were taken. You're 12 now. Of course you've changed. Of course you're different. They know that. They just want their daughter back, whoever she is now." I walked with Maya down the hospital corridor to the conference room. Through the small window in the door, I could see a man and woman sitting close together, holding hands, both of them crying. Frank and Diana Russo, who'd spent 5 years searching for their daughter, who'd never given up hope, who were about to be reunited with a child who barely remembered them. Detective Simmons opened the door and Diana Russo looked up, saw Maya standing in the hallway, and her face transformed with a joy so profound it was painful to witness. "Maya," she breathed, and stood up so fast her chair fell over. Frank Russo stood too, both of them frozen, afraid to move too quickly and scare this stranger who was also their daughter. Maya stepped into the room slowly, studying their faces, searching for recognition in her fractured memories. Diana was crying so hard she could barely speak. "Baby, it's me. It's Mom. We've missed you so much. We never stopped looking for you. Never." Frank held out his hand cautiously. "Maya, sweetheart, we know this is scary. We know you might not remember us, but we love you. We've always loved you, and we're going to help you through this." Something broke in Maya then, some final wall crumbling under the weight of too much emotion. She ran to Diana and wrapped her arms around her mother's waist, sobbing into her shirt, and Diana held her daughter for the first time in 5 years, stroking her hair and whispering over and over, "You're safe now. You're home. You're safe." Frank joined the embrace, surrounding Maya with both parents, and the 3 of them stood there crying while I watched from the doorway with tears streaming down my own face. This was why I did this job, this moment, this reunion, this child being returned to people who loved her. Detective Simmons touched my arm. "You saved her life," she said quietly. "If you'd dismissed that essay as fiction, if you hadn't investigated, Maya would have stayed lost. You gave this family back their daughter." I shook my head. "I just read what she wrote. She saved herself by telling her story, even when she didn't realize that's what she was doing." We left the Russos alone for their reunion and went to discuss next steps. Maya would need to give a full statement eventually, detailing everything she remembered about her kidnapping, the years she'd spent with the Chens. Robert and Susan Chen would be charged with kidnapping, child endangerment, and a dozen other crimes. The investigation revealed that Robert Chen had worked as a maintenance contractor at a facility near the Russo home 5 years ago, had seen Maya playing in her yard, and had become obsessed with having a daughter. He and Susan had been unable to have children, and instead of adopting legally, they'd taken someone else's child. They'd planned it for weeks, watching the house, learning the family's routine, figuring out how to access Maya's bedroom window. The kidnapping itself had been disturbingly simple. They'd taken her in the early morning while her parents slept, driven her 3 hours away, and started a new life based entirely on lies. They'd homeschooled her to prevent anyone from asking questions, isolated her from anyone who might recognize her, and systematically convinced her that her real memories were dreams. For 5 years, it had worked. They'd created a false life so complete that Maya had accepted it, until a substitute teacher had assigned a creative writing exercise, and Maya's suppressed truth had emerged disguised as fiction. The trial happened 8 months later. I testified about the essay, about my conversation with Maya, about the moment I'd realized who she really was. Maya testified too, with counselors and her real parents supporting her, describing her years with the Chens in careful, painful detail. The defense tried to argue that the Chens had provided Maya with a loving home, that they'd never physically harmed her, that their crime was born of desperation, not malice. The jury didn't care. Robert Chen was sentenced to 30 years for kidnapping and related charges. Susan Chen received 25 years. They'd stolen a child, stolen 5 years of her life, and stolen 5 years from parents who'd suffered unimaginable grief. The judge called it one of the most calculated and cruel crimes she'd ever seen. Maya slowly rebuilt her relationship with Frank and Diana Russo, helped by intensive therapy and the patient love of parents who understood their daughter had been traumatized. She remembered more over time, small pieces of her life before the kidnapping returning in fragments. The maple tree, Biscuit the dog who was indeed still alive and ecstatic to see her, the blue shutters on the house she'd been born in. She returned to Riverside Middle School, wanting some continuity in her disrupted life. I saw her regularly, checked in on her progress, watched her gradually transform from a frightened girl who'd been told she was someone else into a young woman reclaiming her identity. 3 years after that day in my office, Maya came to see me before graduating 8th grade. She'd grown taller, more confident, the gap between her teeth now corrected with braces. "I wanted to thank you," she said, "for believing me, for reading my essay and seeing what it really was. No one else did." I hugged her. "You're the one who was brave enough to write it, Maya. You told your story even when you thought it was just fiction. That's what saved you." She smiled, and I knew she was going to be okay, that the Russos had gotten their daughter back in every way that mattered. Thanks for watching till the end. Make sure to subscribe and like to not miss the next story.